Morning, Aizu Wakamatsu. My name is Jason. I come from Taiwan, and it's been a lovely 4 days in Fukushima. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to understand and to get to know the land and the people who are so resilient throughout the earthquake and trying to get back up in such a uncertain future. Today I want to share with you a story that's very much of my own, but also a story that's very much of everyone's image. And it's projecting something I think that's deeper, our internal fear of not confronting something that we could do more to the world, and yet we're just sitting around and not doing something or anything. Can I have my slides up? I grew up in a night market in southern Taiwan. I don't know any of you have been to Taiwan. Raise your hands. Okay, I see a few people. I grew up in an industrial town in southern part of Taiwan called Kaohsiung. My mother runs a beauty parlor in a night market like this. Growing up, I spent every day doing homework next to my mom's shop. What I found most about an environment like this is how people are interconnected with each other, how our lives cross each other in a way that we don't know how much we will be needing each other in the future. Growing up, I've always been taught a night market is a micro image of a society. Every day, you meet with so many people, and everyone is trying to survive in an environment like this. My mother never went to college, and yet I received the most important education from her. She always told me, whenever you have a chance, you should provide more opportunity to others. Because if God gives an opportunity to you, that means God take another opportunity away from another person. So that idea has always been on my mind. Whenever I start a business, whenever I becoming a legislator, a member of Congress now, I've always think, how can I provide opportunities to others? This is a teapot that has been passed on to my family for generations. Growing up, we were in a very poor family. We didn't have much to do. We didn't have any toys to play, but we have a really good family time. My grandfather would always make a tea, and then he would gather around all the kids in the night market and share stories. He would tell, in an agricultural society, everyone helps each other. In a time of difficulty, everybody welcome everybody to their home for dinner, for supper, for meals. Everyone is taken care of for the comfort, for the warmth. Nobody goes hungry. So I've always have this image of how do we pass on knowledge? How do we pass on important things in our life? How do you tell your children important things for your family? This teapot is something of a family treasure. It's been passed down from my grandfather to my father and now to me. And I treasure it as a symbol of passing on important value. What do I see in Aizu, in Fukushima, is you have something important to pass on. It's something related to a true Japanese spirit, which is resilience, which is we don't want to take fate as it is. After I graduated from college, I had a chance to travel. I left my hometown, and which is very rare for someone like me. I went to Central America. I had saved up enough money to travel from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and all the way to Peru. This is the first time I detached myself from a familiar environment. For the first time, I get to see what it means to be a Taiwanese. Why should a cup of coffee that costs $3 in Starbucks in Taipei would be a livelihood for a family in Guatemala? The way that we detach ourselves to understand our environment better is an important technique that we should always carry. During this 6 months of travel, I get to understand something that I could never find answers for. There are 5 questions I ask myself. Who am I? What is my mission on earth? How the world is different because of me? Where do I come from? And what should I do with my life? I wrote down these questions at the age of 23 when I went backpacking. 10 years later, when I started business, when I entered into politics, I still ask myself the same questions. Today, I want to ask you, are there questions for you that you cannot find answers for? These are the important questions you need to ask yourself. Not all questions in your life have answers. You need to keep searching. You need to keep looking for questions that have no answers for. This is something I have been thinking about since my grandfather passed away, since he stopped telling stories over a pot of tea. I thought of myself, what exactly is the value of our existence on the world? What are we doing on earth? Are we just living and breathing? Are we just making money? I think we are creating stories, and we are leaving those stories we created behind. So the first questions I want to ask to the audience today is, what stories are you looking forward to tell you children? I think this place, Aizu, Wakamatsu, and Fukushima has an important story to tell. And that's why I think I want to come here to share with you the message. I am an entrepreneur turned legislator. It's a weird combination. People think that politicians all talk, no do things, but I want to change that. I want to change politics with entrepreneur spirit. So much so that has to do with my upbringing in night market. The idea of growing up in the night market makes me believe that you can do anything. You can survive, and you will have your value, and you can change things. So how do I do that? Let me tell you a little bit about my journey. I started TEDx Taipei in 2009. Taipei is the third city in the world to be granted for license. Over the last 8 years, I've curated more than 400 talks and a dozen of conferences. And most of all, I get together a group of change makers, a community that is willing to say no to status quo, that is willing to say, hey, we want to change. So 3 things, passion, courage, and change, are the 3 important elements that we need to learn to distill in our society. What I believe a gathering like this is for everyone to have a chance to speak with each other that you normally wouldn't have a chance to. How do a business person talk to a sake master? How do a farmer talk to a professor? And how do we bring that environment? How do we bring that element to all crowds of the society? Our society is confronting problems because too many experts thinking in their own silo way. And that is why I want to get into politics and change that, because we are living in a society ruled by experts who think they can determine the future. And the future is so complex. We can never determine with one single domain knowledge. Taiwan has been a very turbulent place over the last 5 years. We've suffered from the economic downturn, and we have a quite vibrant democracy. On the eve of March 18th, 2014, a group of students stormed into the building of the premier, the nation's highest administrative official, executive. They broke in the windows, they start trashing everything and breaking things. Premier then ordered a forceful removal of the students. They shot water guns at these students. Students then took to the streets. All of a sudden, thousands of people, if not tens of hundreds of thousands, marched to the streets. They are protesting for an illegal passing of a bill of free treaty with mainland China. What I found during that particular moment is not just a protest against China. It's actually a protest against generational injustice. It's against some things that are so not right. And how do we do something to change it? I sat in one of those protests, and I feel like I'm powerless. I've done so much in the community. I've created a business, but I sat there as if both of my limbs and my legs were chopped off because I feel I'm hopeless and helpless for these young people. These young people, most of them college students, they skip class and then they come to protest. I ask myself, what should I do to help them? How can I set up an example so that in the future they can follow? They can be something that they say, look, if we see something that is wrong, we want to be the thing that changed the system. So I decided to join politics. In the end of 2015, I was nominated for a non-constituency legislation position for KMT. I accepted the nomination because I wanted to see what if on a wall of two sides, always people are on the other side of throwing eggs and protesting and shouting and fighting. Inside the wall, politicians, they are going on a daily basis. What if I climb across that wall and roll off my sleeves and try to change things? So during my first congressional speech, I use a device that is developed in Japan in the wake of Fukushima earthquake. It's called SafeCast, which Peter will talk about later. I demo a SafeCast as a way to monitor natural disaster more effectively, more efficiently through IoT, through technology. That was the night before my speech was the big earthquake in Tainan, southern part of Taiwan. A 4.7 magnitude of earthquake rocked the city, and several big buildings were toppled down. I talk about it in a way that that's never been happened in the arena of politics. There are three focuses as my political agenda: education, culture, technology and innovation, and environmental sustainability. I want to find a way to blend three circles, to find a common ground, to pursue a future that is sustainable, that is good for everyone. So as part of my efforts, I continuously host public hearing to bring together different stakeholders, to host events, to host public hearings so that everyone have a conversation. And also for the first time, I take what I've learned from TED and then I created Congress Salon, Open Congress Salon. This is the first Open Congress Salon that I hosted where I talk about gender equality. And I'm proud to say I will be one of the first legislators to push the advance of same-sex marriage in Asia. So that's something I think important thing to pass, and also that means the progressiveness of a society. The future is not linear, it's a complex future. And I think you understand how a natural event will change everything. This natural disaster will change everything. Because it's not linear, we need to think about a non-linear way. How do technology will change the way we face how society is organized, how infrastructure is organized, how the roads are laid out? Have our technology caught up with the aging society? Are our minds and hearts prepared for the coming of robots? Are robots our friends or caretakers, or are they our threats? I think none of the legislations are ready for this. But I want to be the first one to throw the ideas out there so that these things can be discussed in the government so that our society can be better prepared for it. Someone that influenced me quite a bit is Joi Ito. He's now the current MIT Media Lab director, and he's Japanese. There are several principles that I pay strong attention to. These are 9 principles. A few things I'm thinking, how do I blend my political ideal with entrepreneur spirit? And I learn from this man. I want to take 2 things from these 9 principles to share with you what I've been doing in the parliament. First one is practice over theory, and second one is learning over education. We need a new form of leadership, one that changes politics with entrepreneurial spirit. And I believe I'm living it, and I'm trying to set up an example. There are the 9 things I'm hoping that anyone who in the future sees politics will have a different eyes to it. An open system, politicians should think like startup, act like the entrepreneur, non-linear path, iterative thinking, think ecosystem, always living in beta, small and nimble, and lastly, community and conversations. These are the 9 things I think about when I think about how I go about my political affairs. How do we create iterations after iterations of bills so that everyone can understand everything is open, can be traceable, you can find all the data and records online, so politicians cannot lie. They can have an open record. Everything can be checked. I share with you 2 examples that I promoting within the parliament. I hosted a conference called Shareable City, where June was part of, where I talk about how do we better use public space and to condense the overusage of the public space and turn them into sharing economy business models. So over the course of 24 hours, we invited designers, programmers, entrepreneurs, public policy makers, and then we would brainstorm and we do hackathon. We come up with 17 apps that would basically help better use of public space. A lot of it has to do with a biking trail and how do we use the public housing and how will we take care of the lonely elder people in the city. This is the first example. Second example is a open policy platform called vTaiwan. It's a platform where we upload all the important issues that we discuss in the parliament. And we upload them, and before we go into voting, we have a very deep discussions online. And for example, these are some of the controversy that's going on in Taiwan regarding Uber. Should Uber be legal? So everything is discussed on this platform. And all the audience's opinions can be shown in a data visualization format, as you can see. And things like this allow decision makers to have more educated and informed way of making judgments. And in the way that all the budget can be more transparent, and all the things and the proposals and the policies can be more effective. So things like this I do. And I don't care if I go on to the second term. I see this more as a calling. Just as I see coming to Aizu and Fukushima as a calling. And I believe Aizu has a story to tell. And I want to ask you, as the last question, before I end my speech, what stories are you looking forward to telling your children from this space? Lastly, I want to leave you with a quote by scientist Carl Sagan. Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were, but without it, we go nowhere. Thank you very much.